It's kind of interesting. I kind of got known for these live streams where I'm basically burying people. Basically cutting a pro wrestling promo for however long and berating people due to lack of talent or what have you. And, there's some people out there that I can't do it to. That I have no hatred really for them. I just pity them. And I look this direction because I'm looking at one of my screens here. And I'm intrigued by what I see. Because I would have hoped that this person would have learned with what happened in his life. But it seems like he has not. So, some of you might remember a YouTube personality named Captain Cummings. Well, Captain Cummings is no more. There is no Captain Cummings. Captain Cummings, he abandoned that and everything he was doing, according to him, to spend time with his family, work on college, and try to do well by them, which I think is honorable. And from the get-go, even though he and I had a falling out, a rather bitter one at that, I still wished him the best, because I want for Phil to be able to be a good father and a good husband. Because, for if any one reason is the reason, it's because the last thing that a father should be doing is taking time away from his family just to get mad on the internet. Unless you're making money, in which case that's a completely different scenario. Now, I'll be honest with you. I am in a position that a very rare amount of people get the opportunity to have. I'm an op-ed writer for one of the biggest websites on earth. And the funny thing about that is that was what I had been wanting for a long time. I've been working towards that goal. I have reached it. Now it's on to the next thing, whatever that may be. I don't even know what that is yet. But I am in a position that many people would probably envy, I would think. Maybe you don't want to write for the same website that I do, but I'm happy with the freedom that they give me. But as it stands, Phil has tried to mount a comeback of sorts. Now, it's not news. Captain Cummings, the former Captain Cummings, his name is Phil Cummings. He's always used his last name. He's always been very honest about his real name is. He's gone by his real name in the same way that I have. And, Phil and I were quite friendly at one point. We've had DM conversations, a few years ago about comics. He actually gave me what was basically a buyer's guide that I was not expecting just on Swamp Thing books. He's like, and it was so in-depth and probably the most education I've ever got on a buyer's guide of what to get and how to get it. And I really appreciated that he would go out of his way to do that. And he went out of his way to retweet my stuff. He went out of his way to do many things for me during those early days of Comicsgate. And the thing about it is that this is a person I considered a friend. And when we had that falling out, which really seemed random and out of nowhere, and I still believe that he was basically beefing with people, for lack of a better term, to try to get clicks, to try to get people to interact with what he was doing. And I don't know why he felt the need to do that. Some people have theorized that it's because he was starting to lose a bit of relevance, that his the things that he was saying really didn't have a whole lot of impact on what was going around. Some people actually said it was a stylistic change. The fact that he tried to do videos more like Diversity in Comics was doing, which, by the way, Richard's his friend, that he was losing an element of himself. And I think that that's a fair criticism. And his work was feeling low effort. That's what some people have told me anyway. There was a point with me specifically where I just stopped watching him and what he was doing, even though I was still friendly with him, because it felt like he and I basically had the same opinions on a lot of things. And then things started to happen. He and I had that falling out. He's one of the few people I've ever blocked on Twitter. And after that, he had a falling out with Ethan Van Sciver in one of the most pointless falling outs I think I've ever seen in my lifetime. One that I do think, honestly, was a fit of jealousy. You know, you can watch live streams when Ethan had him on, and Ethan was having a ton of success with the first run of Cyberfrog, and Phil was just sitting there looking mad as hell. And those are times of celebration, man, because I've been on a similar stream before, and you go back and you look at it, for me, couldn't have been happier for my friend Ethan. I'm still happy for him, because ever since Ethan came to CG, I've understood that it's a risk for him. You know, that not just doing independent comics, but declaring that he is Comicsgate basically says you can't go back to the big two after this. You know, and that, at the time, would have been more secure money. But regardless, Phil apparently got mad at me today. And I didn't even know that he was back on Twitter aside from his own personal one. Because originally he was going to do some thing about talking about cryptocurrency, which everybody's got a hobby. But I think that got abandoned, which, whatever. And he is apparently starting a new channel. But my colorist for Inglewood, Armand, he got on Twitter, where he asked me, he's like, could you tell me about a few of the antis, you know, people who are against Comicsgate that I've been seeing popping up, trying to get me to work with John Delarose, which the fact of the matter is that my colorist will not work with John Delarose. The reason being is that, to be honest, John Delarose can't afford my colorist, at least not without tapping into Daddy's trust fund, but beyond that, my colorist only works with people who know how to write. So as it stands, I pointed that out on Twitter, and he was basically trying to say that because my colorist had not read his books, that my colorist wasn't alpha or something. It was really, really silly. And I'm like, John, and this is an exact quote, my teams already work with somebody who can write. They know good stories. If they didn't, they'd probably work for you. And they already work for an alpha. I'm over 6 feet tall, John. I'm 10 inches taller than you. I can reach the top shelf. I don't need a stepladder for it, buddy. And Phil decided to get ass mad. And Phil's melting down again. He's been doing this a lot lately. He tried to say that Ethan Van Sciver was broke, didn't have money for lawyers. I've known Ethan for a while. I know that that's very much not true. He bought a house on YouTube money alone, doofus. But this is something I found interesting. Because Phil, 6 hours ago, from the time I'm recording this, got very mad, and then in this thread here, he says, your book is months late, John Delarose writes monthly comics, shut up. Well, here's the thing, Phil, and here's an out-of-context clip where he's trying to, he catches me pondering in a vlog, which, Phil, sometimes people do that. Sometimes people, when they're recording a vlog, think and they don't really care to edit it, which, if your criticism is that I didn't edit the work, you got me. Valid criticism. That's perfectly fine. But it is what it is. I'm not going to go back and edit it now. Oh, goodness. But as long as I have known Phil, I've never known him to be a thinker. But here's the funny thing about this is that he probably should have looked at something else that I had said to another person who's a John Delarose apologist. I told him is that, you know, you can pinch out a turd on a monthly basis, which John does. He's not very good, and he does not hire very talented writers. Or, I'm sorry, goodness, not very talented artists. And in not doing so, he simply just craps out comics and makes things that I would say aren't up to the Comicsgate standard. And when he was told that by Ethan Van Sciver, he lost his damn mind. What little of it he had. Those two brain cells he's got rubbing together in there went... So, but I find that kind of funny, personally. Because that is what manlets do. I mean, John's got his own comic that he's crowdfunding right now. called Wrecked Manlet. I'm guessing that's his autobiography, because that basically is the tale of John De La Rose. But I mean, what else would you call a 5'4" goofball trust fund kid who constantly gets made fun of on the internet? I mean, it's a wrecked manlet. It's just sort of the thing. But anyway, I would much rather have a late book than turn in that book and it not be done, or turn in it to my backers and, goodness, my grammar's all over the place tonight, but turned it into my backers and them be dissatisfied with it. But I've got great talented people working on it with me that have a unique style, and the color work is obviously top-notch because people are begging for my colorist to work with John De La Rose. I'm sorry, guys, it's not going to happen. Again, because my colorist works with talent. Right here. But anyway, what I found sad about this is I checked through the replies of this, and there were some people that I muted, but you got this guy here who says, we don't know if Micah writes good stories because his generic Cape book isn't done yet. Well, the interesting thing about Matt here, now Matt lies about me all the time, mostly because he found himself in a position where he put this thing out called the Mythoverse, I think it's called, and nobody cared about it. He only got $5,000 on Kickstarter, and not that many backers, to be honest with you. Whereas Inglewood made over $13,000, and we got over 500 backers. Of the individual, issues sold across the director's cut, which is the version that I'm most proud of, just because it's going to have all the extra, bonuses and sketches and all this other really cool stuff, plus art from Ibra Canales, who did Iron Sights, and also from Vinnie Tartamella, the artist behind Through the Woods and other books as well, like City of Venus. Now that's a pretty cool comic, and the people who backed that while the campaign was open, they're certainly in for a treat, but so are the people who backed it digitally and backed it physically as well, just the standard book where they're going to get that issue 1 and then issue 0, an extra 12 pages that I gave them basically just for backing it. So, as it stands, Matt, of course, is very angry and obviously very jealous of my success, and that's unfortunate, because what he should be doing is focusing on, creating something better and continuing to further his craft, and maybe he'll catch up to me someday. But I will tell you this, is that, getting onto the internet and lying about me, like he has in the past, like trying to say that I feel entitled to people's money or things like that, I'm sorry, my friend, but if you tell the truth, you will find that it sets you free. But he decides to be miserable and decides not to do anything. He says, what's Curly got to say now? This is something I found kind of funny, because Curly's my favorite of the Three Stooges. I mean, now I'm not buzzing my hair currently, but I remember when I got my first buzz cut, my dad and we came out of the barbershop, and what I ended up doing was a Curly impression, because I love the Three Stooges. So I don't know how this is supposed to be an insult, man. I love Curly. I love that style. You're comparing me to something that I enjoy, so okay. But anyway, so it gets a bit funnier, is that he is basically praising somebody who pinches out turds on a regular basis. Now, Phil, if you like turds, if you don't like good comics anymore, I mean, I thought you used to, that's on you, man. If you want to read right-wing America Chavez, man, that's perfectly fine. But I would much rather you remember exactly what it was like to read good comics back in the day. I know that you were excited for them at one point, but I guess not anymore. I guess it's all about maybe an ideological thing. I'm not quite sure. But either way, Phil, man, it's not a good look for you to continue this, because what really gets me is that 6 hours, then 5 hours here. I find it interesting that he takes these clips out of context and spent all that time also talking with people that are angry. And actually, Phil, if you want to give me a hug someday, maybe I'll forgive you for the way that you have treated me in the past. Maybe. We'll see what happens. But I have a feeling that given that it's your tendency, you would probably just put another knife in my back. You know, the only WWJD that I think you follow, brother, and this is me speaking from the heart, is what would Judas do? I have nothing but pity for you because you don't know how to be a friend to people, and that's unfortunate. You know how to try to socially climb, you know how to use people, but being a friend, I think that's a foreign concept to you, and I don't know why that is. I mean, you came up in the military, you should understand what brotherhood is. I mean, I was raised by a military man. My father was a sergeant in the U.S. Army. And that is one thing he told me a long time ago when I was younger, is that loyalty is important. And loyalty to your friends. I was always loyal to you, man. But this is the results of your actions. Is a social profile that is basically non-existent. And he says Micah should use his writing skills for scripts on his videos. Watched that one looking for a clip, and half the video was him staring into the abyss. I was tired. It happens. It be what it be, man. But here's the thing. I don't even do much in the way of edited videos like I used to. I don't spend much time on Sony Vegas anymore. I mostly do live streams these days. And more people are interested in what I do than you. That's just a fact. More people are interested in the next comic book that I'm bringing out, 3 Nights, 4 Days, Part 1, which goes live on May the 8th. And by the way, for those of you watching, you can sign up for the mailing list in the description below. And we are going to have a secret perk for you guys if you want to commit to it. But even if you don't, if you're just on that mailing list, we're going to give you some goodies anyway, because me and my team, we love you guys. And we want you to feel that appreciation from us anytime you back a book that is something that I am writing and putting out there for you. But here's the thing, Phil, I will continue to use my writing skills. I will at least say that to you. I will continue to use my writing skills and be a good op-ed writer and to service my audience by giving them the work that they want and the op-eds that they want to read. Not everybody who reads RT is going to like what I do, but that's just part of the game. But they have the right to their opinion, like you do. The thing is, Phil, when I look at this and I see the way that you behave, and I see the way that you behaved prior, I can't really do anything but just call you Phil. I had a feeling this was going to happen with the whole B. Claymore scandal. Because I want you to think about this from the perspective of the person from sitting, on the outside in. Is that you, a person trained in the military in how to fight, had your camera phone up, walking backwards away from B. Claymore. I mean, I remember that his gut is probably about as big as mine is now, because I've been stuck in my apartment for a month and a half because of this damn coronavirus. And you were backing away from him. And I remember saying that you had seen combat at one point. I might be remembering wrong. But why were you backing away from him? Why did you even need the camera phone up? If all you really wanted was your $20 back, it's kind of hard to get it when you're backing away from him like that. Were you just going to have him throw it on the ground and scoot it over with his foot? That wasn't a good look. And I hope that you appreciate that Richard went out of his way to make a video defending you, when honestly defending you was an untenable position. Because you looked terrible to everybody except your own fans. You looked like a wuss. Because the next thing you do is you live stream with your wife in the car, mind you, while you're driving. Away from him, again, mind you, away from him, calling him a pussy. Then you did another live stream trying to justify your behavior. And you didn't look good there either. And that's one thing that I find quite funny, because you seem to be convinced of this reality that you have set for yourself where you're the hero and everybody else is just this big bad wolf. Phil, I genuinely think you have a mental problem. I genuinely think that maybe you have some sort of an issue. And I honestly think that you should go to the VA and you should talk to a therapist or something. I would assume that as a veteran you can do that. I would hope that you would do that. I remember there was a point where you were not working, but just doing YouTube videos. And then after your meltdowns, and you had a massive amount of people unsubscribe to you when you turned on Ethan, I remember you woefully saying that you were going to start auctioning off your comics on eBay because you needed money. Phil, you wouldn't have had that problem if you had gotten the job. And that's why I can't be angry at you. I legitimately think that you're not connected to reality. And I'm hoping that if you're watching this, that this is a reality check for you. Because in the time that you were away, I got a comic funded. I got a good amount of backers for a first-timer. I've managed to take a reputation in Comicsgate that was waning and make myself relevant again. And not only relevant, again, have one of the books that a lot of people are looking forward to. And I've got artists working with me who are incredible. And more in the background for future projects that are incredible. And I'm going to do my best to bring writing that matches their talent so that we can make books that people remember for the rest of their lives. That's been the goal for me for a long time. And you know that. Your anger, I think, is foolish. You can defend John Delarose all you want. Maybe he did something good for you. But it's not a good position to be in, once again. You know, you find yourself trying to convince yourself, in a sense, that what you're doing is good. John Delarose is a doxer. John Delarose doxed Clint Stoker and threatened him with it. John Delarose threatened to dox Chief Justice Optimus. John Delarose said he had the personal information of a longtime comic skater, Mrs. Biggins. By the way, there's only two people who would know the real name of the Biggins family. One of them is Cecil, who would never tell John Delarose anything because I know how much Cecil hates him. The other person is Tim Lim. Meaning that Tim may have given that information to John, which, if that is the case, I could never even speak to Tim ever again, and I used to be quite friendly with him. Or he didn't, and John was blowing smoke, but was using that to threaten someone's wife. And bluffing. You're not very good at selecting company these days, Phil. Again, you spent an hour getting mad on the internet instead of spending time with your wife and kid. You used to do that to Gail Simone, now it's against me? And by the way, keep in mind, I'm not like Gail. I'm not going to report you to the Twitter police. I'm just going to mute you after today. Because I have no more interest in speaking to you. And I told you that already. Because you are incapable, it seems, of acting like an adult. You have a family to care for. If you want to do YouTube stuff, and you want to do a new channel, and you want to start over, then God bless you. I hope you have success. But Phil, you're at home with your wife and child, and you decided to take time to yell at a guy who does op-ed articles and writes comics because he said something about somebody you like. Do you have any idea how pathetic you are now? This is not the sort of conduct that I am used to seeing from people who served in our armed forces. Maybe my father just set a high standard. I don't know. Or many of my friends who served too. And by the way, I've said this, even though I don't like you anymore, I still respect that service. I still respect the uniform, but I have a hard time feeling anything for Phil Cummings, the person, aside from pity. Because you are incapable of picking yourself up and doing something with yourself, it seems. And you've been given all the tools for it. It's sad to see somebody I considered a friend go down this road, but you made your choices, man. They're unfortunate, but in the end, we always reap what we sow. And if there's any way that I could put together how I think your life is at this point, you have sown a barren field, and a barren field is what you're reaping. Comicscape moved on without you, and was happy to do so. I appreciate you going out of your way to get me involved in this community, and to helping start it, really. You and I are two guys that helped dig the trenches that a lot of people are fighting in right now. But your service was no longer needed. I hope you get the help you need.